Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to the channel, and I am here for, I guess, a follow-up video to my last discussion video about my discussion video on rock versus metal. Now, a lot of you guys in the comments section of that video really did seem to know where I was coming from. I think a lot of you guys did understand where I was coming from with that video, and I appreciate the positive responses that I got. And, you know, if you didn't agree with me, whatever, that's fine. But however, I did receive a comment by an individual that I have received comments from before, and I want to talk about some of his comments and I guess generally speaking, the ignorance towards a lot of older bands, whether if it's rock or metal. Now, this isn't that debate on rock versus metal now. It's actually going to be, my rant on the ignorance towards anything that's classic, whether if it's rock or metal. So, yeah. So I just got to say that, I think I do know who this person is, and the username goes by the name of Tyler Black. Now, first of all, this guy's name is Tyler, supposedly, so right away we're off to a bad start. Can't trust anyone named Tyler, man. But I think I do have an idea on who this is, and I think it is Mezzy Mez. Some of you guys may remember him. Maybe you guys have noticed that he hasn't commented in a while, and I have my suspicions and my theories on why he doesn't comment anymore. I guess it's because, I had a downfall. Now, downfall, I use in quotation marks for a purpose, in my musical journey. Like, my tastes weren't getting heavier. I took a complete U-turn in my musical journey. And that's what some people think. Like, some people think that, I didn't, progress. Now, I will say that I didn't progress, as far as, getting into metal that is heavier and heavier and heavier. But you guys have to understand that, that's not a journey that I could have continued. I knew that there would be a lot of baggage that would come with that, and there was just certain things that couldn't work for me. And if it makes you feel any better, I felt like, I was into heavier styles of metal just for the sake of being into it, such as subgenres like melodeath. Now, I know melodeath isn't really the most extreme thing out there. I do realize that. But it is one of the heavier subgenres that I do listen to here and there. Now, I don't listen to it as much as I used to, obviously, because it isn't really my favorite subgenre like it used to be a few years ago. And I think that's why people like Mezzy Mez have walked away from this channel. They claim that I sold out, just because, I prefer classic bands now. I sold out to the mainstream, supposedly, based around this idea. And I just don't get it, man. There's a few things I do want to talk about here. Now, first of all, I do have a feeling that this Tyler Black guy is Mezzy Mez. And the reason being is because, just by the way he talks and everything, and just the comments that he says, how he calls me a rocker and stuff like that, that's something that Mezzy Mez did. And another giveaway that this is Mezzy Mez is nobody gets this upset over someone that you don't really know. Like, if this person, this Tyler Black, if he was really, a newcomer, supposedly, nobody gets this triggered over someone that you barely know on YouTube, unless, you've had some kind of history with them. So that's why I think it's Mezzy Mez. Just by the way he talks, and it's just, it doesn't make sense that this is a newcomer, you could say. So yeah, that's how I kind of have the idea that it is Mezzy Mez. Now, to be honest with you guys, I'm actually more amused by this more than I am upset by it. I'm actually not that upset by it. However, I do want to address some things because the whole idea of me selling out and the whole idea of me not putting melodeath at the top anymore is something that I've been wanting to discuss anyway. So I figured that it would be a good opportunity to talk about it, of course. Now, first of all, I do want to go over some of the comments that Tyler Black has left, of course, about me selling out. Now, I don't know if he means, I just sold out to, just classic metal, just for the sake of classic metal and rock or whatever, or I'm just you know, talking about and praising this era of rock and metal just to gain more views. See, that to me would be selling out. Selling out, in my eyes, is doing something that you really don't want to do for recognition. Selling out, like, in my eyes, if I were to sell out on this channel, to me, that would be, you know, talking about pop music like Taylor Swift and stuff, you know? Like, that to me would be selling out. It's not getting into, you know, classic rock and metal and, you know, talking about that a lot on the channel. If anything, I think that lessens the channel because I've noticed that my videos on Led Zeppelin and Rush and several other bands, I've noticed that those videos don't really get a whole lot of views, unfortunately, because, well, this generation does have a severe ignorance towards a lot of classic rock and older styles of rock in general. But that's all stuff I will get into. But first, I'd like to get into more comments from Tyler Black. And I just want to, you know, address some of the things. You know, I'm not going to, you know, name call or anything like that. You know, I just want to get some things clear here. Now, it seems to me that this Tyler Black, he claims that all I listen to is classic stuff. Like, the only bands I'm into are classic bands. Now, I've even told him this before. I said, you know, hey, you know, I'm into 2000s bands, so, you know, classic is not the only thing that I'm into, you know what I'm saying? And I know he said that, you know, you could make the argument that, you know, 2000s isn't even considered modern anymore since we're in the 2020s now, or something like that. But, man, if that's the case, then, man, do I feel old, you know? And I think one of the reasons why I and a lot of people do still consider 2000s bands modern bands is because, well, a lot of the previous generation still does have a hard time getting into a lot of 2000s bands. And I think because of that, we still consider 2000s modern. You know what I'm saying? And I know some people could make the debate that 90s is, you know, even less tolerable for the previous generation as well. And, you know, I think it's just one of those cases where it's like, you know, we're, you know, reaching different decades, of course, so, you know, the more that's becoming classic, of course, you know. I guess, you know, it could be like one of those cases where you can't expect someone who was born in the 1930s to get into something like Iron Maiden or something. Like, that's most likely something that won't happen, because even bands like Iron Maiden are too extreme for, you know, people that were born in that decade, in the 1930s. So I guess it is just one of those cases. I don't know. Like, I guess we're just going through that same thing again where, you know, we're getting close to the point where we're considering 2000s classics per se, even though a lot of the previous generation still has a hard time digesting bands that form then. I guess that makes sense. But I don't know. It's still pretty recent to be considered classic, to me at least. But yeah, I mean, classic is not the only thing that I'm into. You know, I'm into bands, like I said, in the 2000s. After all, whenever I started this channel, I started out with 2000s bands. As a matter of fact, there was a point in my musical journey that I despised classic rock and despised classic metal. I wanted nothing to do with that era for the longest time. You know, it wasn't until my second year of college until, you know, I really gave this era a chance, which I know is really late, but better late than never, of course, right? So yeah, I mean, it's to say that, you know, that's all I listen to is, you know, classic bands. That's not true at all. Now, I will agree that that's what I mostly listen to, especially these days. I just find more enjoyment out of the classic bands these days than modern bands. I probably listen to classic bands probably 80% of the time whenever I'm listening to music, you know? But it is, you know, sometimes I will listen to, you know, bands that are a little newer than classic, you could say. 2000s bands, you know, but that's about as new as I go, which, you know, I know that, you know, this Tyler said that I was closed-minded for thinking, you know, the 2000s, I mean, is going to be the last time that music is going to be really good. Now, you could say that that is close-minded, but if you really think about it, music is not going to get any better from here. It's really not, unfortunately. I hope I'm wrong with some exceptions. I have heard some bands that formed in the 2010s that are actually really good bands. Now, they're smaller bands, mind you. You know, they're bands like Vigester and Black Lakes, two bands that I've came into contact with several times now. And I think they're really good bands, and they're really small bands that have potential. But besides those bands, there's just a lot of bands out there that just don't do it for me. Bands that either formed in the 2010s or didn't start releasing music until the 2010s. One of those. You know what I'm saying? I just have a hard time getting into those bands because a lot of metal, especially today, has become edgier, especially in metalcore. B, there's just a lot of music and rock and metal these days that are so overproduced. And I've even heard some comments about the band Starset being the next Breaking Benjamin, and that to me is very concerning. Now, sure, maybe if Breaking Benjamin was auditioning to be a pop band or, a boy band or whatever, sure, I can see it. But if Starset is going to be the next Breaking Benjamin, that's just scary, Like, I don't want to think about that. Like, really? Music and rock music is doomed if that's the case, honestly. And for the record, like I said before, no, I don't just listen to classic bands. Now, sure, that is, what I listen to a lot these days. So, yeah. And, if you think that I sold out based on the fact that, Melodeath isn't my favorite genre of music like it used to be, then whatever. You're the only person that's, walked away from my channel because of that. Because of the fact that Melodeath is not my favorite anymore. You say, well, that Zach D guy, he sold out, And I would not say that I sold out because I already gave you my definition of selling out. Now, sure, maybe the bands that I'm into now are a little more popular than the bands, I considered my favorites then. But you have to remember that there's a reason that these bands are really big, and you really got to show that appreciation for these bands as well. And, it doesn't matter, if, a lot of the bands I listen to are, mainstream or well-known or whatever. How is that any worse than, only sticking with underground bands? As a matter of fact, I think that's worse. Because, good luck finding things in common with people. Good luck, finding a friend out there who knows about this band that only has 45 fans. You know what I'm saying? Now, once again, there's nothing wrong with, not so well-known bands. As you guys know, I do like some not so well-known bands, some smaller bands out there. But that shouldn't be all that you stick with, honestly. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. I don't know why, this has anything to do with selling out. I just have shown more appreciation for the older styles of rock and heavy metal. And that's not to say that, I still don't like, some things in Melodeath. Obviously, you guys know I like the band In Flames. I think that they're actually my favorite in the genre, even to this day, in that subgenre. But obviously, I don't think they're the greatest band in the world, but I still do like them, and I still consider myself a fan of the band. So even though that's the case, I don't understand, why, people had to walk away, or, this one subscriber, I should say, Mezzy Mez, had to, felt the need to walk away based on this idea. It isn't like, I'm completely dismissive of the subgenre anymore. It's not like I don't like anything from it anymore. It's just it's not my favorite anymore. What is the big deal? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't understand it. And I just don't really understand this whole, ignorance towards a lot of classic bands. It's unfortunately something I've been seeing a lot with people. Not just with this individual. Now, this individual did say that he did like some classic bands, but it's clear that he liked metal more. Metal more than dad rock. Well, let me tell you something. Without that dad rock, we wouldn't have metal. As I have addressed in my discussion video. I mean, did you even listen to the discussion video? Did you even listen to it? That's what I have to ask you. Just, God, the ignorance. And like I said, it's not just with this individual either. It's with many people. Many people have an ignorance towards classic rock and classic metal. Whether they listen to modern rock or modern metal, they say nope. They, look the other way when classic bands are recommended to them. They look back at that era and think, why listen to that when I got this? It's such a severe ignorance that it just gets a little frustrating to think about, because not only do they need to show some appreciation to these bands, but they don't know what they're missing out on. Especially since there was more talent back then. Like it or not, there was more talent in the past. Now, sure, there's talent to be found in a lot of today's bands. That's not what I'm saying. But do you ever notice a lot of the metal bands today that the solos are underwhelming? The solos in a lot of today's metal mainly last like 5 seconds or something. You get solos in a lot of previous and classic heavy metal bands where the solos take up nearly an entire song. And that's why a lot of, the classic heavy metal band songs are actually pretty long for the most part. Not all of them, but you know what I mean. It's just one of the things that really made metal unique back then. And one thing I have noticed as well, and one of the reasons why I have a gravitation towards the old school style of rock and heavy metal, is because it sounds more original. You know what I'm saying? Like, it has that original sound. Like, you have to go into these bands with a specific mindset. And I think that's what a lot of people are failing to do. For example, let's say a Breaking Benjamin fan checks out Led Zeppelin or Rush or something, which I'd say are essential for rock fans for sure. And they say that they don't like the band because they don't sound cool or they don't sound like Breaking Benjamin. But they're not supposed to sound like Breaking Benjamin. You know what I'm saying? I think the problem is a lot of these, fans of the newer styles of rock and metal are going into these bands with the mindset, hoping and feeling that same vibe that they get with a lot of today's stuff. But I'm here to tell you that you're not going to find that, which is why you need to go into these bands with some appreciation. I'm not saying that you have to like classic rock and metal more than modern rock and metal. That's not what I'm saying. But you should show some appreciation for the older era of these genres, for sure. And I think another problem is they look at these classic artists and they think, well, those classic artists, they just don't sound as cool as these newer bands, Sure, that rock band might be an influence on some of my favorite bands today, but who cares? That was the past. We have this now, and that's all that matters. That is not the right mindset to have. For sure, give some appreciation to the older bands. That's really all I gotta say. It's something that I have noticed with a lot of people. And to this Tyler guy, whether if it is Mezzy Mez or not, I have good reason to believe it is. Dude, I don't get you, man. I really don't. But if you have a problem with me just because of my U-turn in my musical journey, then whatever, don't watch my videos then. It's fine. You don't have to, watch them if you claim that I sold out or whatever. Now, wait a second. Wait 1 second. I've seen Mezzy Mez comment on Cover Killer Nation's videos. And he's also a Rush fan. Does this mean Cover Killer Nation sold out too? Whoa. Unbelievable. But of course, maybe, Cover Killer Nation does have more of a preference to, extreme metal. Maybe that's why, he still, watches his content and whatever. But like I said, I really don't care, He can, leave the channel and stop watching my videos if he wants. You can go watch other reviewers if you want. Doesn't matter to me. That's all I really got to say. So let me know what you guys think. Do you guys agree that there's an ignorance towards a lot of classic metal and classic rock? Feel free to let me know. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day and take care.